like this Louise Perry, who wrote this book, The Case Against the Sexual Revolution, she was asked, do you think there is a counter-revolution kind of brewing? And she said, when I talk to she's maybe in her 30s, she said, when I talk to my friends, my age, girls, women, she said, I actually think that there is. Like, there's rumblings of people are very deeply, deeply dissatisfied with the current. So I like to tell Muslims, we need to, again, take a step back, have the long view, know that Allah has the longest view, as you said before, Jazakallahu khairan, and know that, falsehood, ja'al haqq wa zahaq al-batil, right? This is not a sustainable situation. And Islamic teachings on gender and sexuality are not a problem, and they're not an embarrassment, right? They are the solution that everyone is crying out for, and they just don't know. And why is it that more women convert to Islam than men, if Islam is supposedly so restrictive and patriarchal and so on and so forth? And they're not converting to reformed Islam, right? Quote unquote, deformed Islam. They're converting to Orthodox Islam, right? And they're wearing their hijabs, and they're happy to do so because they now have gained dignity through modesty, through constraint, through the place that Islam gives to the woman and to the man, in the way that it respects sexuality, in the way that it regulates it, right? So we need to take that view, and we need to realize that we should be, honestly, I think gender and sexuality, and this is it's what the West prides itself most on, or certain sectors of the West, because the West is not uniform. And there are people in the West who are very unhappy about what's going on, Christians and Jews and others too, right? So we shouldn't paint everyone with the same brush. But the kind of official sort of Western, view that's presented to the outside, they're very self-congratulatory about gender and sexuality. And personally, as a Muslim, okay, I think gender and sexuality is where the West has most obviously and embarrassingly gotten it wrong.
Yes.
And it's not difficult to see that at all. Just take a step back. The bill for the sexual revolution is piling up higher than ever, and it's rolling in, and the devastation is real. And, there is no solution other than in the solution that Islam provides. Another very good book, by the way, is called Them Before Us. Have you read that, by Katie Faust?
No, I don't believe so.
She's a Christian writer, and she writes about them before.
The them is the children, right? Them before us is the...
Them is the children, and us is the adults. Right?
Yes.
And everything she says in there, almost to the T, is 100% in conformity with the Islamic Sharia, and she doesn't even know it. Because she says if we put children's rights first and children's interests first, which is what we should have been doing all along, and not adult desires, okay, then we would not have very easy no-fault divorce, which became the case, as of the 1970s. She also is very much against any type of in vitro or surrogate mothers or in vitro fertilization that takes anything from outside the couple. And she follows cases of children who have been conceived in this way, and the effects are devastating. They grow up and they're constantly in search for who they actually are. You cannot play with human beings' identity at that level. I need to know who my mother is and my father. I need to know where my DNA comes from.
And that's
you are denying children their fundamental rights by allowing them to be concocted in laboratories by this way. This is dhulm. This is unjust. This is wrong, right?
And that was a tactic that was used against African Americans when they were enslaved, right? To deprive them of their lineage and their history, and to disorient them in that sort of way. Was a fundamental tactic to trying to break the spirit and break them down and do that work. And now we have people electing to do it, and the consequences haven't changed.
And people are deeply disoriented. Like, who, okay, I know this is my mother, but who's my father? Well, your father is an anonymous sperm donor. Well, thank you very much. I need to know who my father is, my actual biological father, because biology matters. It's not just like the one who raised you. Yes, that's important, but I need to know, like, biology matters, right? This is systematic denial of our age, right? Biology.
These scandals for sperm donors saying one thing, and then it turns out they're not who they said they were, right? These are actually the matters of litigation. So there's even a recognition there that it really does matter who was the person behind the donation.
And then there's no limit. So you have the sperm donor, again, sowing wild oats. And then, so you have maybe 50 kids who have been, who are all half brothers and sisters, and they don't even know. And they might end up marrying each other if they're all in the same community. Like, this is a complete disaster. And the fact that no one thought of this, or no one saw any ethical kind of qualms with this just shows you how utterly, really clueless people are without actual divine guidance. We're not smart enough to figure it out on our own. We really are not. We can, Newtonian physics, Einstein, whatever, that's all fine. We might be smart in certain areas. We cannot figure out ethics alone. And the project of the Enlightenment was to put all human knowledge on the grounds of reason and empirical science, including moral knowledge. And I think everyone has realized now that this has been a complete and utter failure. And this has led to the relativism that we see today, because reason alone cannot provide us with, strong, with indefeasible moral foundations, because we simply don't have the perspective to, And the other thing I wanted to say earlier about this too, and I think Muslims need to realize that the sands are always shifting very, very rapidly. And whatever people think is so obviously right and wrong today, it was completely different just 5-10 years ago, and it will be completely different 5 and 10 years from now. And when you're in the heat of the moment, the moment looks like it's all there is. But again, the benefit of having revelations, it gives you that objective angle to step outside. It's your yardstick you can use to measure any society, including the one you're in. And by the way, when they made in Denmark and Holland, when they made pornography legal, they made everything legal. In the 1970s, including child pornography, was not actually illegal. And those two countries became international hubs of child porn because it was not illegal to produce it. Okay? So what is child porn? I mean, you're raping children essentially on camera. It's the most sordid thing you could possibly imagine. And it's only in the late 70s they said, you know what? Maybe we should pass laws banning this. Hello? I mean, how could you have not realized that? Okay? And so they passed laws, but now you have this, it's festered. And I understand that even today, a lot of stuff comes, of that nature comes from those particular countries. And until the early 90s, you can find, I think, clips even on YouTube of French, Oprah type shows, where they're interviewing politicians and media personalities and actors and stuff. And some of these men are openly boasting about how they had, sexual relations with underage children, boys, 8, 10, whatever. And it was it was just totally accepted. It totally accepted.
Many of the big figures of the left in France were very well known for that, and actually attempted to get age restrictions removed. Foucault and Simone.
Foucault, one of them. Simone de Beauvoir, another one. Yes, absolutely. And these are all the icons,
Yeah, a lot. SubhanAllah. Help us and not wipe us out.
And people think, oh, it would never go to pedophilia. Consenting adult is totally separate from a child. Well, no, I mean, people. It seems obvious to you. It was not obvious to people in the West 30 years ago. No, and it's not going to be obvious to people 20 years from now either, or less, because they're pushing. They're trying to drop the consent laws.
I think that people underestimate how far desire can be taken. I think that people, they think that, well, it's like two paradigms of desire. They think that if I have a desire and I fulfill it, then I will be satisfied. Mm-hmm. Realize that if you have a desire and your only response is to fulfill it, then the desire actually shifts and it continues to move. And when it comes to human beings and desire, there's almost no limit to what a human being can desire. And the desires will continue to move, just as a junkie or an addict, has to continue to get a stronger high in order to satisfy the sort of same thing that they were doing. The sexual desire or any other desire, it's the same way. Mm-hmm. We ask Allah for protection.
And the other thing too is that you said that desire keeps shifting, and the other thing too is it's very easy to rationalize anything too. Yes. So reason is one thing, rationalization is another. It's very easy to spin rationalizations for any type of behavior, and we see it all the time. Yep. So that's another thing too. Well, what's wrong with this and blah blah blah. It's give me any, take anything almost, and you can kind of rationalize it.